Now, a lot of my recent videos, I'd say, have been quite positive about recommending good players to buy. But in this one, we're going to turn the tables a little bit and we're going to talk about the best players to avoid. All right then, so the first player I wanted to talk about, not necessarily, he's the most popular striker in the game or anything, but Mateta, surface value, I think he could be a really good pick. 7.5 million for a guy that got 16 goals from 26 starts, 7 assists, what's that, 23 returns from 26 starts in the Premier League last season. He was on great form at the end of last season, 9 goals in his final 6 games of the season. Obviously, Palace completely transformed under the new manager Glasner. He's got some decent fixtures to start off with, but something that would really put me off of Mateta is that he's currently playing for France at the Olympics. Now, I would put France probably as my favourites to at least get to the final, the gold medal match, which is literally a few days before the Premier League is due to begin. So if he gets all the way to the Olympic final, even to be honest, at this point, if he's playing in the Olympics, I would say that puts him at a bit of doubt as to whether he's going to start for Crystal Palace. He's missed their entire pre-season being at the Olympics. I would question whether he's going to be first choice for Palace, at least to start with. And you can see here on the Fantasy Football Hub expected points data for the first few fixtures. By the way, if you want to see this data for yourself on all of the players that you consider picking in your team, I've got a 50% off link to Fantasy Football Hub in the description. But they actually predict Mateta not to play in game week 1. So, for me, all those things considered, I'd be put off with him as an option, at least to start with. I'm not saying across the whole season he's an avoid. If he can re-find the form that he was in at the back end of last season, I think he's going to be a great pick. I would also just question, that run of 9 goals in 6 games is obviously amazing. Do we think that he's really going to perform at that level again this season? In the back of my mind, I have a little bit of doubt about it, but who knows, right? You can't predict the outcomes of all of these things in FPL. He could have a barnstormer, but I think, to be honest, when he comes back from the Olympics, gets back into that Crystal Palace team, if you don't have him from the start and he really starts to perform at a top level, after 2 or 3 games of seeing him playing at a really, really good level, you can probably bring him into your team anyway. But certainly to start with, I would avoid Mateta. Next up is a player that, has caused a heck of a lot of frustrations for FPL managers in recent seasons. That's, of course, Darwin Núñez. Now, the absolute trap of Darwin Núñez is his expected returns. Expected goals, expected assists, and expected returns per 90. The guy gets chances left, right, and centre pretty much every game. 0.95 expected returns per 90 makes him, in terms of this statistic, the amount of expected returns, goals and assists he gets per 90 minutes is the 3rd best of any player in the Premier League. But he only scored 11 goals and got 11 assists. So I guess that is 22 attacking returns from 22 starts. But he could have had a lot more. 16.2 XG and only scored 11 goals. So, yeah, I think he's just a big troll in my mind. He always outperforms his expected goals data as well. I think he's had enough time at Liverpool to sort of bed in and settle into that team and, really give him a chance to find that confidence with his finishing. But he just hasn't gotten there. He misses a lot of big chances. And also, new manager comes in, right? He's got a plethora of options that could play in the front 3. Jota, Núñez, of course, Salah, Gakpo, Luis Diaz. There's sort of 5 players really for those 3 positions up front. So there's always going to be players left out. And, given how frustrating he can be with missing chances, it wouldn't surprise me if Darwin Núñez, even at the start of the season, could be left out. Or, at times in the season rotated, etc. Particularly, obviously, with Liverpool being in the Champions League. So there's so much competition for those frontline positions for Liverpool. He misses a lot of big chances, underperforms his expected goals data. He's just a massive troll, I find, whenever I have him in my team at least. I would probably ignore Darwin Núñez, but similar to what I said about Mateta, right? If he starts off the season strongly and really starts to show some form in those first 2 or 3 games, then I would consider him as an option. If he can actually finish, I would consider him a good option. But given what we've seen over the last couple of seasons and last season, bit of hesitancy, I guess, of whether he's going to start. You've got to avoid him, I would say, at the start of the season. Next up, a couple of thumbnail stars we'll talk about. Kevin De Bruyne. Now, he is obviously, right, no doubt in my mind, one of the best and most important players in that Man City squad. And to be honest, the Premier League as a whole. I would still argue that Kevin De Bruyne is probably the best player in the Premier League. I think that's a fair argument still to make. But there are a lot of things in my mind that just push him down, particularly in FPL. He's proven to be injury prone in recent seasons, right? And Pep, I've found, has managed his minutes over previous seasons. So you cannot guarantee that he's going to start every game. It's just not possible. He only started 15 games of 38 last season, right? I just think Guardiola, Foden and Haaland are better. They're the three Man City players that I would pick ahead of Kevin De Bruyne. Almost no doubt in my mind that I would do that. The expected points data and underlying numbers for last season look pretty good, right? He got 4 goals and 10 assists from 15 starts, so 14 attacking returns from 15 starts. But the one thing that kind of puts me off Kevin De Bruyne in terms of his returns a little bit is the fact that his returns are always more weighted towards assists than goals. Obviously, goals are more points bearing than assists, particularly for midfielders. They're almost worth double the points, 5-3. So for that reason, I think it's a really hard case to pick Kevin De Bruyne in your team, particularly when he is 9.5 million, the same price as Foden. Considering how many goals Foden scored last season and how many games he started, I think he blows De Bruyne kind of out of the water, really, in terms of an FPL asset. So let me know in the comments what you think of De Bruyne. I would avoid him. I can feel some pelters coming my way from the likes of FPL Tom, but Chris Wood at 6 million, right? He strikes me as good value. No doubt in my mind that he is good value if he plays, and that's the big if for me. I do think, given his form end of last season, 14 goals from 20 starts when Awoniyi was injured, great form, and I would imagine that he's going to start the season as the Nottingham Forest number 9. I would suggest that's going to happen, With the form that he was in last season, the numbers he put up, he's probably going to be first choice. But I think Awoniyi is a really, really good striker. And the way Nuno likes to play his teams, 3 up front, 2 wingers, 1 striker, there's only room for 1 number 9 in that team, and it's either going to be Awoniyi or Wood. And I think Awoniyi and Wood are very similar levels when they're on their day and on form. If not, Awoniyi is probably a little bit better. So like I said, maybe Wood starts the first couple of games of the season, but if he doesn't get off to a good start, I can see Awoniyi coming into that team very quickly and getting into the starting 11 again. And regardless of whether that actually happens, I do feel like the 2 strikers will share minutes. You don't know exactly who's going to be on the bench every game, but the 2 of them will share minutes in my mind. So yes, Chris Wood's stats are really good. His value, 6 million, is really good. Looks attractive option. Opening fixture's really good. I know all that, but I would just be a little bit hesitant about Awoniyi on the bench because in my mind, I think he replaces Wood at some point. Now this one is probably a little bit controversial, but hear me out, right? I am not saying that Cole Palmer is a bad player. I am not saying that he's a bad pick in FPL. But I just have some reservations about him, right? I would first of all question, is 10.5 million a bit too expensive? Now, the reason I ask that is because the key question for me with Cole Palmer is, can he replicate the numbers that he put up in the Premier League last season? Bearing in mind the number of penalties he scored and Nkunku being in the team as well. Now, I don't think Nkunku takes penalties off Palmer. I think Palmer is the safe Chelsea pen taker. But how many returns did Palmer get just by being, the absolute stalwart talisman of that team, where he could afford to be a bit selfish and take the chances for his team? But with Nkunku in there, a player of his, what should be his quality, I think he will prove to be good quality in the Premier League. I think the 2 of them will somewhat share returns. And when you look at the expected goals data compared to how many goals he actually put away, he did massively overperform that stat. And I don't necessarily think Cole Palmer is an elite sharpshooting finisher that will do that season on season. I reckon he'll probably return sort of 15 goals, 7 or 8 assists, something like that, which is obviously a very good season. No doubt in my mind that's very good. But it's not 10.5 million in my mind, particularly when you've got someone like Salah who is 2 million more expensive than that. It's not a whole lot, and I think the returns are kind of going to speak for themselves when you go for Salah. I think across the season he gets probably nearly 10 more returns than Palmer just by being that much better of a player, in my opinion. Again, I'm not saying that Cole Palmer is a bad option. I'm not writing off what he did last season. I would just expect Chelsea as a whole team to improve, and Nkunku in that 11 and other players that could come into that 11 to potentially share a few more returns with him. I just don't think he'll perform at the level he did last year. In terms of, goals, assists and all that kind of jazz, right? I do think he's a good player and he'll help Chelsea out this season and probably be one of the best players in the league. I just question if he can quite match that level of returns again. Okay, another couple of players, not necessarily suggesting that they're popular, but I've looked at and they might be attractive to some, but I just wouldn't go near Martinelli and Trossard. Trossard's, looking at the expected points data, Trossard's expected points for the first 3 fixtures, according to Fantasy Football Hub, look really good. But obviously, that is on the assumption that he starts all 3 of those games. And these 2 players are notorious for sharing each other's minutes. They put up fairly similar numbers in terms of at least expected returns per 90. Goals and assists, obviously Trossard was quite a bit better than Martinelli last year, but his expected goals and assists were relatively similar. If I were to pick one, I prefer Trossard, but because they both play in the same position and will be competing with each other for minutes, I think you just have to ignore both of them. Gone are the days of a couple of seasons ago where Martinelli was first choice on that Arsenal left wing, and I'm pretty sure he was 6.5 million a couple of seasons ago. He ended up being one of the best players in the game by far, but yeah, these 2 guys are going to share minutes, battle each other for those minutes, and battle each other for goals. So I think at 7.5 million, their price tag's quite high anyway. I think you can do a lot better, even for cheaper. I wanted to talk in general about 5.5 million defenders, but also the Man City defenders. Schär is in there as well. I think 5.5 million is quite expensive for what he brings. I don't think he's worth that. I would avoid him. Then also, you've got the Man City defenders. Other than Guardiola, who I think is probably going to play every game, is attacking enough to be worth that 6 million price tag as well. But the rest of them, I would not trust any one of those 5 players to start every game. I just don't think you can. Kyle Walker become a little bit more injury prone in the last season or so. I don't actually think he played that well last season, and he had a really poor Euros for me. I just think he's declining a little bit. As much as I respect what Kyle Walker's done in the game, I just don't see him being at that top level for much longer. Ruben Diaz, we saw him only start 28 games. Akanji only started 28. Ake only started 24. Stones, long time out with injury, only started 12 games. And then obviously Schär is first choice for Newcastle. But I already said I don't think you can really pick him when there are other cheaper Newcastle defenders or just better, cheaper defenders in general. So the point was about those 5 Man City defenders. And ultimately, I wouldn't go anywhere near them. I think you just pick the Arsenal ones for 0.5 million more. They probably keep more clean sheets across the season. They're more nailed, and they also probably offer more attacking threat as well. So all of those 5.5 million Man City defenders, I'd give them a hard ignore. I guess I have to say a bit of an apology here, because in the latest FPL draft video I made, I said that my 3 goalkeeper contenders were Dean Henderson, Sells of Nottingham Forest, and Sanchez of Chelsea. Although quite a lot has happened since that video already. But Dean Henderson, I cannot guarantee that he's going to be first choice for Crystal Palace. I reckon the best 4.5 million goalkeeper in the game is going to be, in my mind, the starting Crystal Palace keeper. But we don't know who that is yet. It could either be Dean Henderson or Sam Johnson. We just don't know. So for that reason, I'd probably be a bit hesitant about picking Henderson right now. Nottingham Forest have signed a new goalkeeper. He's 6'8" from Brazil, with the idea that Forest were pretty poor at defending set pieces last season, particularly with Sells in goal. So that suggests to me that Sells is due to be replaced. I thought Sells could actually be a really nice option, because you look at the expected goals conceded that Nottingham Forest put up last season. It's really good. It's on a level kind of with, you know, it's better actually per 90 than Chelsea and Crystal Palace. So, you know, you would suggest that Sells is a pretty good keeper, but you cannot guarantee that he's going to play. And the same applies for Rob Sanchez as well. Chelsea have signed another goalkeeper. So they've got, I believe his name's Jurgensen. He came from Villarreal. So they've got Jurgensen, Sanchez, and Petrovic. 3 goalkeepers who could start for them. You just don't know who's going to play. So ultimately, there is too much doubt in my mind about these 4.5 million goalkeeper picks as to who's going to play, that ultimately, I probably wouldn't pick any of them. Alright, and that's the end of the video. Now, I'm conscious some of these players are more popular than others. You know, some of them you might not have even considered as an option yourself, or some of them you might be considering. Some of them obviously a bit controversial, like Cole Palmer. So let me know in the comments, you know, if you disagree with any of the thoughts that I've had in this video. I always say this. You feel free to disagree with me in the comments. I really don't mind, as long as you're polite about it. You know, FPL, at the end of the day, is all about people having different opinions. If we all had the same opinions on all the players, we'd all have the same team, and it'd be really boring. So if you disagree with anything I've had to say, we're really interested to know in the comments. So like I said, just be polite about it. If you did enjoy the video, find it useful, insightful, or interesting, please leave me a like rating. I'd really appreciate that. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Like I said, I've got a 50% off code to join Fantasy Football Hub or renew if you're already a member and you want to renew for next season. Get 50% off with a link in the description below, and you also help me out as well. Yeah, I think that's about it. Oh, subscribe, by the way, if you enjoyed this video, want to see more. Subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel, which should be just here on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.